Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about the evolution of fine art photography, a genre that seeks to go beyond the simple capture of reality in order to express the artistic, emotional or conceptual vision. Since its beginnings, photography has had to struggle to be recognized as an art form because for a long time it was seen only a technical or documentary medium. However, through different moments and stages, photographers managed to position it as an artist discipline with its own visual language. For this project, in addition to research, I created one photograph representing each of this period. The image takes up the main characteristics of each stage. But technically and conceptually. Through these photographs is sought to experiment with a different approach of fine art photography.
Pictorialism. Pictorialism was the first major attempt to validate photography as art by imitating the aesthetic of painting. It was characterized by dreamy and romantic atmospheres, intentional blurring, and direct manipulation of the negative of print. The most common subjects were idyllic landscapes, allegorical portraits, melancholic scenes, and intimate moments of everyday life. Here, the most important aspect was not the captured reality, but the author's vision. The main references of this moment are Alfred Stieglitz and Edward Steichen. The concept of this photographic session is the self. I show different versions of it throughout the different periods. Beginning with the pictorialism, it represents the idealized self that mental image on people have of us, that imagined version of ourselves.
Strike on modernist photography. As a reaction against pictorialism, strike on modernist photography emerged, completely rejecting the imitation of painting. Here, the goal was the purity of the photographic medium, highlighting its own technical qualities. The images are characterized by great sharpness, the use of small apertures to achieve full depth of field, an emphasis on lines, textures, and geometric forms. There is no manipulation. The intention is to show reality clearly and directly. Important references include Ansel Adams, Edward Weston, and Paul Strand. Strike photography seeks sharpness and the absence of photographic manipulation. The image maintains the principle of strike photography through its clarity and composition, but it also introduces a tension between what is real and what is imposed. The concept of this photograph is the shape itself, showing the part of us that is manipulated and created by others, that version of ourselves that we don't feel comfortable. Surrealism, a new vision. Photography became a medium of experimentation used to question the perception of reality. Techniques such as photorams, solarization, multiple exposures, and photomontage were used. Unusual angles such as extreme high and low angles also appeared. The goal was to create images that challenged logic and constructed impossible. The photograph addresses the idea of the mask of the self, showing the coexistence between visible identity and the inner self through the use of long exposure. Duplication of the figure is created, while the body remains facing one direction. A kind of shadow moves toward the opposite side. This visual resource breaks away from the literal representation of reality, characteristic of surrealism, and allows the construction of an image in which two versions of the subject inhabit the same space. In this way, the photograph suggests a tension between what we show and what we truly are, creating a sense of fragmentation and instability of identity. Humanist and documentary art photography. After the Second World War, photography adopted a more human and social perspective. Its objective was to capture the human condition and everyday life with an aesthetic intention. Natural light and real environments were prioritized, avoiding studio settings. Here emerged the concept of the decisive moment, in which form and content align perfectly in a precise instant. The full essay also appeared as a way of expressing a personal vision of society. Key references are Henry Cartier-Bresson and Robert Frank. This photograph focuses on capturing an intimate everyday moment that reveals a side of the subject that usually remains hidden. The scene is lit solely by natural light, which reinforces the image's sense of realism. In this way, the photograph aligns with the humanist approach by capturing a genuine moment of everyday life, where emotion and the human experience take center stage. Postmodernism and conceptual photography. At this stage, photography stopped being a window to the world and became a critical tool. Artists no longer sought to find the image, but construct it. Complex scenes were created with art direction, costumes, and narratives similar to cinema. Existing images were also reused to question culture, identity, and consumerism. The works were often large-scale and intended for museums. Important references include Cindy Sherman, Andreas Gorsky, and Jeff Wall. The image is constructed through the superimposition of several photographs, creating a composition in which multiple versions of the person exist within the same place. The use of the color blue visually unifies the scene and conveys an emotional sense of internal sadness. This fragmentation of the body and repetition represent the multiplicity of the self, suggesting that identity is not fixed, but rather composed of different versions that are not always visible to others. Since it's a constructed image rather than a capture, instead the photograph belongs to the conceptual approach. Expanded and digital photography. Currently, fine art photography is in a stage of total expansion. Technology allows for extremely high levels of details and the creation of hybrid image between photography, digital art, and even artificial intelligence. Reality is no longer the limit, but only the starting point. Themes such as identity, gender, race, climate crisis, and surveillance are explored. In addition, photography is no longer necessarily printed. It can exist on screen, installations, or experimental formats. Contemporary references include Wolfgang Tillmans, Sanele Muholi, and Gregory Gretson. The photograph seeks to express the distortion of identity in the digital era, in a context where there are multiple versions of what a person should be. Identity can lose part of its essence. The photograph was intervened using artificial intelligence too, incorporating technological resources and a discourse related to the construction of identity today. In conclusion, the future of fine art. Regarding the near future of artistic photography, I believe there will be a very marked duality. I feel that the use of AI will become increasingly commonly, creating more creative and technical possibilities. But at the same time, there will also be a movement of artists who reject this tool and seeks to return to more traditional process as a form of authenticity. I also believe there will be a greater experimentation with materials and textures, pushing photography toward the physical and the experimental. I believe fine art photography will continue transforming not only in how the image is created, but also in how it's presented, perceived, and experimented.